بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. The Quran does not neglect any aspect of our lives. So it could not possibly neglect the family aspect of our lives. The family aspect of our lives is a very central, important and necessary part of everyone's life. So in different places in the Quran, Allah Azza wa Jal gives us some guidance and some advice. In some places there are laws and rules. Some places there are warnings. So just in today's recitation, there were several things that were mentioned in reference to the family. This is after acknowledging that the family is a great bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُم مَّوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. It is from His signs that He has created spouses for you, and then He has created affection and love between you and those spouses. And in other places, as we listened in the tilawat, that from those spouses Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us children. And of course, the parent aspect cannot be neglected. The huquq of parents, the favors of parents upon us. All of this is repeated in the Quran. But to what extent is a person supposed to dedicate themselves to their family? And what is dedication to family? How is it defined? Now there's no doubt that a person has to, for the man of the family, he is primarily responsible for looking after the necessities of the family. And in many families, this is the case where the man is the sole breadwinner, and this is how the family is running. But not every family is like this. In some families, it is a shared kind of a responsibility where the woman of the house takes some responsibility. And in fact, there are some families where the man is unable, for some reason, something has happened because of which the man is unable to earn. So there are cases where the woman is the sole breadwinner for the family. And there are some cases where the children are supporting the family. There are a variety of scenarios based on what that family's conditions and circumstances are. Khair. But one thing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want us to compromise is Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu La tulhikum amwalukum wa la awladukum an dhikrillah wa man yaf'al dhalika fa ulaika humul khasirun. This is putting a limit now to the kind of engagement and the extent of engagement with the family. What is that? That you enjoy your time with your family, you have fun with them, you live your life with them, and you dedicate yourself to them. But if that dedication looks like you are being distracted from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that means now you have lost sight of the objective of your life and you are only focusing on the needs of life. You have lost sight of your priorities. And there are levels of priorities. So what a person wants, for example, wants or desires, but is not necessary for a person, this is one level of a priority. Somewhere a person wants to fulfill that need, but it's not a requirement for their well-being. It's not a necessity. Above that is the necessity of the human being, what a person actually needs for their well-being, for their survival. And then above that is the objective for which a person lives. So the objectives are never compromised. Even for the sake of needs, objectives are not compromised. In fact, the needs are always fulfilled in such a way that the objectives are fulfilled. The needs are tailored around the objectives. And they are never placed at odds. Our objective, our greatest objective is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's to be the true slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now Allah Azza wa Jalla is our creator. He knows that we need to eat and sleep and drink and such and such and such. Allah has created those needs in us. What's our job? Are we going to create a conflict between the needs and objectives? Are we going to say, oh Allah, on one side you have put the stomach that is always hungry, and the other side you're telling me to pray. What do you want me to do? Do you want me to pray, or do you want me to earn? Are we going to do that? No. We are going to earn in such a way that we are also able to pray. We are going to earn in such a way that we stay within the limits of Allah, the commandments that Allah has given us in terms of earning. So our needs are always fulfilled in such a way that the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are kept in front of us as the ultimate priority which can never be compromised. So Allah Azza wa Jalla does not give specifics here about which kind of remembrance of Allah. Anything that has to do with an instruction, a command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there are usually two things that distract us from it. Two things play the biggest role. There might be other things, but they're more minor. The biggest things that distract us from the remembrance of Allah are our wealth, meaning earning or spending. Somebody's going to compromise their salat because of their job, and somebody is going to compromise their salat because they're outspending their money. It's either in the process of earning or in the process of using it, whether it's on needs or on enjoyment, luxuries, whatever it is. One of these two things is going to cause us to potentially become unmindful of the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether it's in the form of salat, or siyam, or zakat, or dhikr of Allah in any form, fulfilling commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in any way, shape or form. So wealth is a major factor in distracting us. So we have to accept that this is the nature of wealth. Whether it's the processes of earning it or using it, all of them have this danger, this threat that this could potentially distract me from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the second thing is family, specifically children. وَلَا أُولَادُكُمْ. We are working for our children. People work for their children. They want to build a future for their children. And they're doing things for their children. They're caring for their children. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to do that. In fact, He is the one who has given us these children, and He is the one who has given us the commandment to look after these children, to never neglect these children. But He says, this is the limit. If spending time with children or looking after them or doing such and such and such is taking you to the extreme where you are now unmindful of the commandments of Allah, now you've gone too far. So this makes it very clear for us that this is the parameter that we cannot cross. This is it. Within this, we have to do whatever we need to do. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ يَفْعَلْ ذَلِكَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْخَاسِرُونَ. Anyone who allows this to happen, they are going to suffer immense losses. They're going to suffer immense losses. And we need to keep one thing in mind, that anything that becomes a cause of us disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can never be a cause for peace and comfort in our lives. That thing, that one thing, or those many things that get us to disobey Allah, those things themselves will never ever be a source of the contentment of heart. Whether it's our wealth, it's our family, it's our children, it's whatever it is. Anything that becomes a cause for disobedience of Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not kept contentment of the heart there. The contentment of the heart is only in the remembrance of Allah. أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبِ. And anything that takes us away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to be a cause of trouble for us. I won't go into more detail than this. But this is enough for the intelligent person to understand. In the other place, in Surah At-Taghabun, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, inna min azwajikum wa awladikum aduwwan lakum, fahdharuhum. From your spouses and from your children, some of them, sometimes they will end up being your enemies. It's a very blunt statement. Enemy. A person would never look at their wife or their children as their enemy. But this is a situation that will occur when either a person's spouse, whether it's wife or husband, or a person's children have stood up and are at complete odds with them and are making their life miserable. So this may happen. It won't always happen. Min azwajikum wa awladikum. Sometimes. There's a possibility. And as most of us know, this possibility is very real. Spousal conflicts are not something rare and unheard of. In fact, they are common. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, be wary. Be wary of them, of that element in them that may become your enemy. Okay, Ya Allah, how do we deal with this? Look at the way Allah wants us to deal with it. Subhanallah. وَإِن تَعَفُوا وَتَصْفَحُوا وَتَغْفِرُوا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Allah says, learn how to forgive. The solution to all of that, learn how to forgive and forget. Ta'afu, let it go. Tasfahu, forget about it. Taghfiru, forgive them completely. If you do this, you will find Allah also there, ready to forgive you and ready with His mercy. When we arch up against each other and become stubborn, and we don't work with each other, then yes, we become enemies. That's what enemies are. The enemy is the one who is not willing to compromise with you and he says, I am in your face and I'm going to keep causing you trouble as long as I'm here. But we don't want to have enemies within our families. Neither from our spouses nor from our children. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us to let things go. Now, someone might say that, well, why am I always the one that has to let things go? How come the other person never has to come? How come it's always me? And it's true, it's a valid statement. You see, it depends on if you are letting things go and you're not disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you should continue doing that. If letting things go is making you a negligent person, it is making you also break a command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you need to try another approach. You need to do something else. If somebody in the family is breaking a command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you pretend that you're completely blind to it and you don't see it, you're not doing anything to rectify it, then this is not a good example of letting things go. This is an example of your negligence. You cannot ignore those things. And we'll talk about that in the next surah, addresses that issue also. But for all other things, just let things go. Often enough, it's something that someone said. It hurts. It causes pain. It causes anger. It offended someone. It hurt feelings. And a person is having trouble getting it out of their system. But this is where we have to learn the lesson of forgiveness. It's not always an easy lesson, but the motivation that Allah is giving us in this verse is فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Allah is also forgiving and merciful. If we want more access to the forgiveness of Allah, then we have to learn how to forgive people. And it's not forgiveness when it's something small, it's forgiveness when it's something that really hurts. That's when it's true forgiveness. And the one who forgives becomes the bigger person. They become elevated in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They become more important. Allah's rahmah and Allah's mercy comes rushing towards those people who are ready to forgive. So the fact is that without learning to forgive and without forgiveness, no family can operate. No family is functional. And without this one element, distances grow. People become distanced, whether it's husband and wife, whether it's parents and children, the distances grow because either this side is not forgiving or that side is not forgiving, and they are at odds, and it does immense damage. And this damage is witnessed in our world. The amount of damage that it does. How many families have been ruined because a parent, a father, for example, is unable to forgive their children. And that's it. No, I don't care. You come begging to me at my feet, and then I will think about it. And you do this, and this, and then I will think about it. Otherwise, don't even come and talk to me. And because of that stubbornness, the family breaks. And sometimes it happens with children. The children feel offended by something that the parent has done, and they say, we don't care what happens to you now. Now we're going to see you on the day of judgment. We have nothing to do with you, and so on and so forth. And sometimes it's between the spouses. So the lessons of forgiveness are the beautiful lessons that the Quran is teaching us. We should be ready to forgive people as much as we want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us on the day of judgment. Remember what we read in Surah An-Nur, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, someone who has hurt him so severely. فَلْيَعْفُوا وَلْيَصْفَحُوا. Let it go, Abu Bakr. Just let it go. أَلَا تُحِبُّونَ أَن يَغْفِرَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ. Don't you want that one day Allah forgives you also? So it takes a big heart. It takes a big heart to forgive. But honestly, think about it. If we're not going to forgive our own family members, then who are we going to forgive? We forgive the whole world, but we keep an enmity in our heart against the closest people to us? What is this? So this is not the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to live. Allah is acknowledging, look at the beautiful contrast in these verses. On one side, Allah Azza wa Jalla is acknowledging the conflicts. Those conflicts are there, they're real, they're actual. And you will feel that this person has now become my enemy, they've made my life miserable, they're responsible for all my problems. Allah is acknowledging that yes, this situation may arise, but the solution to that is to just humble yourself and to just forgive for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allahu Akbar. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, قُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَهْلِيكُمْ نَارًا. Save yourselves and save your families from the fire of Jahannam. Before this also, there is a very, very important surah of Talaq. I'll come to that at the end. In Surah At-Tahrim and Surah At-Talaq, they're all about families. The whole surah from beginning to end is about family life. In Surah At-Talaq, it's about separations happening and what to do in those cases. In Surah At-Tahrim, it's about another kind of conflict, where someone is doing something that is bothering you, that is causing you difficulty, and it originates with an event between Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and his wives. But after that, Allah Azza wa Jal gives us the imperative, قُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ, save yourselves and your families from the fire of Jahannam. So, the greatest responsibility for us, even greater than earning and feeding and giving comfort, is to make sure that our families do not rush towards the wrath and the disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is also the responsibility of the head of the family. In fact, it's the responsibility of everyone in the family. Everyone has to work on this together. But it is primarily the man's duty, and the woman is required to give her unconditional support in this mission, in this objective. That at any cost we have to avoid the displeasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is a cost that nobody can withstand, nobody can bear. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives examples. 2 examples for disbelievers, 2 examples for believers. And these examples are to demonstrate that you should do whatever you possibly can for your family. But in the end, if you have done whatever is in your capacity, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to task you beyond that. And look at the examples He gives, the examples of Anbiya alayhimu salatu wasalam. Imagine the power of the suhbah, the company of a prophet. Allahu Akbar. What power must there be? What nur must there be? What iman must there be in just seeing a prophet? But even then, إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَهُوَ أَعْلَمُ بِالْمُهْتَدِينَ. The prophet still does not have the power to give hidayat to someone. That power is reserved with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Nuh alayhi salam and Lut alayhi salam had wives who did not go along with them on this mission, on their mission. They did not. In fact, in many ways, they supported their nation against the Prophet. Allahu Akbar. Now, does that mean that the prophets were negligent? No. Would a prophet ever marry someone who is not pious? No. So they did their best to marry the right person, to give them the tarbiyah that was required, to keep them firm on the commandments of Allah. But this person made their own choices independent of their spouse. And the Prophet did whatever he could to save his wife from this, but to no avail. In the case of Nuh alayhi salam, his wife did not join him on the ark. She got left behind just like one of his sons. One of his sons, the son of a prophet. And Nuh alayhi salam is appealing to the last second, till the last wave. Nuh alayhi salam is appealing to him. Join me, join me, join me. All you have to do is step onto this boat. Irkab ma'ana. All you have to do is step onto this. The rest is looked after. He says, Father, I don't need this boat. I'm just going to climb up on top of some hill, some mountain where the water won't reach and I'll be fine. And as this conversation is going on, a massive wave comes and swallows his son. Nuh alayhi salam could not save his son. And Nuh alayhi salam could not save his wife. The same thing happened with Lut alayhi salam. And the angels came and told him ahead of time that, look, no one is allowed to turn back. No one is allowed to turn their head to see what's happening. But your wife is not going to listen. She will turn back and she will get stuck. And that's what happened. She turned back because of her sympathies for those people. She was so attached to them. She had such a strong, you can say, social network, that these connections distracted her. And instead of thinking of where they have to go, where they have been commanded to go, she was thinking about what's going to happen with them. So she turned back to see. And so she got stuck. Now, I don't know how true this is, but if you go to the area of the land of Lut alayhi salam, which is the lowest point beneath sea level on the earth, and that is where the Dead Sea is. So right in front of the Dead Sea, there is a highway, and on the other side of the highway there is a cliff. And on the cliff, high up, there is a figure, and it's a figure of what looks like a person. And it's a tall, slender figure, and the figure is looking in one direction. It looks like trying to walk in one direction but looking in another direction. The local people there in Jordan say that this was the wife of Lut alayhi salam. When she turned around, she was frozen into stone. Allah knows if it's really her or not, but it looks very much like a person. And it's all by itself. There is no other rock there. It's a completely flat surfaced cliff. And it's there by itself, alone, like a statue of a person turned into stone. Allah Azza wa Jal knows. But Lut alayhi salam could not save her. Now look at the opposite, the extreme example on the other side. The wife of Fir'aun. She has Fir'aun as a husband. The butcher, the killer, and this tyrant. She accepts Islam on her own. In Sahih al-Bukhari, there is mention of one of her attendants who used to groom her. She was combing her hair, and the comb dropped from her hand, and so she said, "Oh, Bismillah." So Asiya, the wife of Fir'aun, said, "What is this Bismillah? Who is this Allah?" So this girl who used to tend to her, to groom her, started talking to her about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Khair, somehow in this process, Asiya accepted the religion of Musa alayhi salam. She started believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and started worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When Fir'aun found out, he started torturing her like he used to torture everyone. And he was called وَفِرْعَوْنَ ذِي الْأَوْتَادِ, the man of the stakes. He used to take these massive pegs, you know, like the pegs that you use to secure a tent, those massive pegs. He used to take them and drill them through people's hands and feet to get them to turn away from the religion of Musa alayhi salam. And this is what he did to his own wife, to teach her a lesson and to make a lesson out of her. So what was she doing in that state? She was crying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, رَبِّ ابْنِ لِي عِنْدَكَ بَيْتًا فِي الْجَنَّةِ. Oh Allah, the fort and the castle of Fir'aun was of no use to me. Grant me a house in Jannah. وَنَجِّنِي مِنْ فِرْعَوْنَ وَعَمَلِهِ. Save me from Fir'aun and his actions. So she died in that state where, forget about being supported or being encouraged by her husband. She had a husband who was the epitome of kufr and shirk, declared himself to be a god. But in that circumstance, she managed to save herself. And look on the other side of Hazrat Maryam alayha Ridwan, who did not even have a husband. And she is raised by her uncle, Zakaria alayhi salam, and she has no one. And in that society, without any support, without any encouragement, she manages to protect herself. How she guarded her modesty, how she protected her honor, and then Allah Azza wa Jal made her the mother of Isa alayhi salatu wassalam. So we are responsible for doing our very best to bring our families towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to save them. And it's only once we've exhausted all our energies, all our skills, all our efforts, then after that, beyond that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not hold us accountable. But we need to make sure that we're doing our job right. Now the last thing that's mentioned in Surah At-Talaq. You know, in Surah At-Talaq, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps giving us the encouragement to have taqwa. But what's interesting is that this encouragement of taqwa is actually interspaced within the verses pertaining to family life. So, وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. A person who has taqwa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will find ways for him. Allah will create ways for him. يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. A person is trapped in the situations of life, but through taqwa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open doors even where there are no doors. Just like He did for Yusuf alayhi salam. Yusuf alayhi salam feared Allah. He knows the doors are locked, but he says, I am going to run towards those doors anyways. That's what's in my capacity, that's what's in my ability. I'm going to do whatever's in my ability. The rest is up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when a person adopts taqwa, then Allah Azza wa Jal creates ways out. And the second promise of taqwa is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make things easy for them. وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مِنْ أَمْرِهِ يُسْرًا. Allah Azza wa Jal will facilitate things for him. Those same tasks, issues and problems that people find impossible, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take this person through them like it's nothing. And people will be baffled. How are you able to do this? How are you able to get out of that situation? How did you manage to deal with all of these things? Such responsibilities sometimes, such responsibilities and duties. How are you able to do it? It wasn't them. Allah was doing it, and their taqwa was the cause of that. And the third promise, both of these promises are related to worldly things. يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا, Allah finds ways out for us in dunya. يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مِنْ أَمْرِهِ يُسْرًا, Allah creates ease for us in dunya, for our worldly affairs. And the third fadila is يُكَفِّرْ عَنْهُ سَيِّئَاتِهِ وَيُعْظِمْ لَهُ أَجْرًا, Allah forgives the sins and gives him an immense reward. This is for akhirah. So may Allah Azza wa Jal enable us to adopt His taqwa and bring our families also to taqwa. We read in Surah At-Tur yesterday, وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَاتَّبَعَتْهُمْ ذُرِّيَّتُهُمْ بِإِيمَانٍ أَلْحَقْنَا بِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ وَمَا أَلَتْنَاهُمْ مِنْ عَمَلِهِمْ مِنْ شَيْءٍ. Those people who had iman and their families also followed them. They got their families to follow them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will join their families with them in Jannah, and Allah will not decrease the reward of those who led them to it. مَا أَلَتْنَاهُمْ مِنْ عَمَلِهِمْ مِنْ شَيْءٍ. So when we lead our families towards good, we get the reward of all the good that they do. We lead our children towards good, we get the reward of all the good that these children do. We lead our spouses to good, we get the reward of all the good that they do. Allah will not diminish their reward, and He will also give us the full reward. Ibrahim alayhi salam is making dua, رَبِّ جَعَلْنِي مُقِيمَ الصَّلَاةِ وَمِن ذُرِّيَّتِي. Oh Allah, enable me to establish salah, but also from my progeny. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable us to look after these trusts, these amanat in the form of our families, and enable us to spend our family life in a way that pleases Him. In fact, make our family life a cause of His pleasure and His forgiveness and His mercy. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. We will now make dua.